What's up, YouTubers? It's your buddy Choppadong. This is a little NBA slash PGA version of DFS Diary today. I'm going to dive in and create a quick Fanduel player pool on this monstrous NBA slate before we head into the All-Star break. And then I'm going to talk a little bit of PGA for those of you that want to stick around, talk Genesis Open. So um, let's kind of dive in today. Very, very simply stated. Like and subscribe to the video, throw you the notification bell down there in the bottom, comment, I will probably respond, click the link if you want to become a DFS Army a VIP, and use the code CHOP to grandfather yourself in to the 20% off discount that will never grow up for you if you never leave the DFS Army. As we dive in, really, really simply stated, the player pool is huge. We sort by and one, and I'm going to blow through this puppy. I don't like Isaiah Thomas, obviously, because he does not have an and one rating. So we're going to try and get rid of a lot of that a little bit later. So we would start with Lillard, again, looking for overall depth. Big drop off here between an 11 and a 7. These guys are pretty much in play. And if you noticed last night, the top 3 rated and one guys were also the top 3 FanDuel scorers on the night. So the system clearly works for the most part. Damian Lillard, Steph Curry on back-to-back nights. Kyle Lowry, Jamal Murray, Ben Simmons, Chris Paul, Dennis Smith, Colin Sexton. I know I usually go like 4 or 5, but on a slate like tonight, if you want to go all the way down to this drop-off, that's fine too. Look for value, so Murray would be in there. Chris Paul, nope, that's Dennis Smith. That still has some value left in his pricing. Kadeem Allen at 5,300 does not have the strongest matchup, but you might want to watch that name for a little bit later tonight. Don't know how I'd feel about Chris Dunn way down the list here and on the queue, taking the Q tag. Scroll over here, but those would be a couple of duplicates I would pay attention to. Not noticing anybody super hot. Chris Paul apparently. Dennis Smith. Okay, so there's a little 3-star guy. Value, hot, and one matchup viable, if you will. These are guys that I'd be paying attention to. There's Kadeem Allen again. You want to make sure these minutes are secure, not just a one-game kind of thing. You want to make sure that he's going to be getting the same amount of minutes tonight before you jump on something like that. If we go to shooting guards, look at, of course, James Harden, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, D'Angelo Russell, Wiggins, McCollum. McCollum always seems to be on this list. It's really funny. He always gets a matchup, and he always ends up with mediocre value. Sometimes he does appear on the value list as well. Klay Thompson, a little bit deeper position. It looks like a little bit slower drop-off when it comes right down to it. So a lot of these guys are also in play. When you dive over here and look at the value metrics, you'd see Levert in there, and then you would see duplicates in D'Lo. I guess that's Wiggins. There's D'Lo there, and Devin Booker. I don't know that I would go up to James Harden at 4.6x. I mean, that's going to be a question of whether or not you want to buy the raw points rather than bank on a massive. Now, he's going to get his 30 points. I think we know that. But other than that, I mean, there's just a lot of pricing. Price needs to come down even more with Chris Paul in the mix. Straight value play and Deion Waiters potentially. Don't know how much I like that. I just looking at the hot and not. 7 points up over the last 3 over the last 10 for Bradley Beal, 6 for Wiggins and Russell. Down here, 5 for Bogdan. It's just a matter of piecing this puzzle together, writing these lists down, putting the appropriate check marks next to guys, and playing the strongest plays you can. I mean, we go through this multiple times a week. The system is pretty straightforward as far as what it produces for you. Small forward, Kawhi, Gallinari. Gallinari is second highest, but look at the drop-off, 24 to a 15. There's a lot of strength in Kawhi tonight. Gallinari, Durant, Redick, Barton, Antetokounmpo, another relatively deep position, even with a Kelly Oubre kind of poking in there. Don't really see a lot of drop score candidates popping in there yet, but value-wise, Leonard, Gallinari, Barton are kind of your duplicates. Is that Knox? It is Knox. Come down here a little bit more. There's some dudes down here at the bottom that you might look into. What is that, Norman Powell, or is that Herzonia? I mispronounced Herzonia, but whatevs. You know who I'm talking about. All the way down to, looks like maybe Otto Porter at the end of the list. If we scroll up and pay attention to who might be on the hot seat, nobody really on the hot. There's no three category player there per se. But you may look at a C.D. Osman if if he's not questionable tonight, if he gets upgraded to probable. Jabari Parker, potentially. Again, 19 minutes last time out, 26 game average. He is running a little bit higher on his minutes roll, 3 game over 10 game. And he's obviously running a little bit hot. His last 3 game value has been a 6.7x. That's what puts these guys on the map, too. The results have sort of been there over the last 3 games. But I don't see any real hardcore duplicates. I see a couple of value and one duplicates, but I don't see a ton of hardcore, third category guys. Siakam, Harris, Harrell, Ibaka, Love, Jackson. A little shallower category here. Looking over for value, Siakam looks like he's going to be important. Kevin Love, maybe not important. That'd be one I'd be listening for the coaches on. PJ Tucker's a little, no, Marcus Morris is the play there, but he's a tough one to call. Scroll over to the hot or not stuff, and we see a massive bump for Larry Nance coming back, obviously off of a little rest or a little extended stint away. Siakam, Harrell. These are a couple of your duplicates in the hot column. Bobby Portis. Is that Thad Young? No, that is Mark Cannon, who we know was hot a couple of weeks ago, or going back about a week. So, again, these are some of the players that you're going to put H's next to, V's next to, whatever. However you delineate or demark what it is that you're trying to identify. We'll wrap it up here really quickly with the centers. Embiid, Jokic, Ayton, Gasol, Nurkic, Karl Anthony Towns. Big drop here from the 23s down to the rest. Looking at the value, I've got a decent shot with Ayton. It's interesting with Joel Embiid. Embiid can be a monster, and he's only projected at 3.8x value tonight with a solid matchup. It's the back-to-back night. Maybe his minutes are way down. I don't know what's going on there. That would be something to look up, follow the news, and see if you can't figure out why we would be giving him such a low projection in what is otherwise a seemingly softer matchup. Unless DeAndre Jordan's defense is what's making that happen. Interesting. Looking at the value again, Nurkic, Karl Anthony Towns, cheap value, and Zubac. Don't know how much I would trust that. Looking over at the hot or not, lots of cold guys at the top. That's interesting. Andre Drummond still running hot. Plumlee running hot. I'd like to see a value projection better than a 4.2. Doesn't give me a ton of confidence. It looks like center might be an interesting spot tonight. Might be a little bit more, less clear cut, a little bit more wide open. Interesting enough, it's a ginormous slate. In slates like this, I typically recommend people play smaller slates. Look for the express. Look for the 8:30, 9 o'clock after hours type starts, because you're generally going to be able to see the chalk in those scenarios a little bit better, and you're going to be able to get off of it. Ownership really gets spread out on those wide open slates, and it makes it really, really difficult. They lend to cash type performances if you can really find the underpriced players. Looks like tonight might be a little bit tougher in terms of value. Let's check that one really, really quick. We'll go ahead and sort that one off and see if we don't see any cheaper guys drop to the top. Kadeem Allen, Tyreek Evans, Zubac. Some of these guys are the dirt cheap guys you might be looking into, but it doesn't even look like there's a lot of obvious drop score candidates tonight. We don't have anybody over 6x, which we typically have a 6 or a 7xer floating out there. Interesting night. Wide open for you guys. I don't probably plan to play much myself. I'm going to be focused a little bit more on PGA, so let's kind of jump over towards the PGA Research Station. I would encourage you to go to dfsarmy.com and read. If you've got time to listen to the podcast, great. But we've got a preview article in Up North and Brody Schnarr, which are very, very good ways to kind of point you in the right direction and tell you what you should be looking at when it comes to this bad boy, the Research Station. What I did was I can make a copy of it, but I can also just open up the link and then start manipulating things a little bit myself. One of the things that you can do is you can sort by value. Now, if I sort it here, we want to go Z to A. And now what I've done is I've pulled all of the value guys to the top. So Kuchar is supposed to bring big value. This is on Fanduel. The DraftKings tab would obviously change things up a little bit based on pricing. I want to get a feel for, again, the pricing dynamics within the FanDuel and the DraftKings pricing algorithms because, again, we know that DraftKings reacts a little bit faster and plays the matchups a little bit more. And so when I see a guy down at the bottom of the list, there was a guy, last name was Sukim Bay or something like that, very, very low Minsal type guy. And he was priced at 7,000 on FanDuel, which is obviously the bottom of their player pool, but he was 7,100 on DraftKings, or maybe it was 7,100 on FanDuel and 7,000 on DraftKings. But either way, they were darn near virtually the same price. And DraftKings will go down into the $6,000 range for their punt plays. So that indicates to me that he's minimum on FanDuel, but he's priced off the minimum on DraftKings, which would tell me he might be somebody to look into. And we'll see if we don't scroll down to him here in a little while. When I'll probably sort back out by salary. But Kuchar, Keegan Bradley, this is the column you're looking at. I mean, DeChambeau is obviously going to be a popular pick. 10-4 for Cameron Smith, who's also going to be popular. Charles Howell's kind of a cut maker type. Events, total rounds. See, here's an easy little quick thing to do for you. 24 events, 86 total rounds. That's over 4, or it's not quite 4. I guess 4 would be closer to 100, would be 90 something. But the closer he is to 125, closer he is to 100, the more cuts he makes. If you wind up seeing there 27 events and 103, what's 27 times 4? 114? No, 108. So he hasn't missed many cuts, and that's a lot of what you're looking at. You want these numbers to be as close to 4 times this number as possible. Just quick math, easy way to kind of generate a cut maker, although you can look on FanDuel, look on DraftKings to see how many cuts they've made out of how many events they've played. This is just one way to kind of get a feel for that before you get there. Any of these guys, at least on the top of the salary list, typically are going to be strong cut makers anyway. But what we're wanting to put as many guys through the cut as we possibly can. So we're going to focus on the value here, but we're going to focus on course history here, and then we're going to hopefully focus a little bit on recent form as well. And that would be this column here. I guess when I kind of gave myself the ability to sort these columns, I kind of jacked up the headers a little bit, but that's what's going on. This is the years 18, 2015, 2012, etc. And this is Pebble Beach, Waste Management, Desert Classic, Sony Open. Why am I blanking on this one? But either way, these are the recent tournaments going back to, Tournament of Champions at the beginning of the year. And you can see the recent form on Kuchar's been fine. He won the Sony, placed top 10, placed top 20, and didn't play in these 2 tournaments. But in his course history at Riviera, out there at Genesis Open, has been strong. He's missed 1 cut out of about 6 or 7, and he's made his last 3. So Kuchar's obviously a fairly safe pick, as safe as golf can give you. Keegan Bradley, a little bit up and down because you're looking at typically top 70 plus ties. These are a couple of missed cuts. It doesn't have the MC next to him, but it should. You should see MCs over here too if they miss the cuts, and I don't see any 94. I guess we're getting a little bit away from that, but that's typically what you'll see on these spreadsheets when you look at the MC. But typically over, last week was different. 60 in ties made it. It was a 3-round job. This one's cut after 2 down to 70 in ties, I believe, is a little bit more along the lines of the standard. So I can see Keegan Bradley's missed a couple of cuts here lately. Another one that I'll get down to here in a little while is Jim Furyk, if I can find him. He's not on the salary. He's easier found sorting by salary than he is here through the value metrics. But Jim Furyk has made every cut except for maybe last year. Normally you'd think that's an outlier, but Jim Furyk's also in his late 40s, and it could be just the downside that he just doesn't hit it far enough off the tee to really set himself up to have success here. Now, he's a consistent guy. He probably makes more cuts than he misses, but when you start seeing guys on the downsides of their career, they start becoming rockier choices. They don't maybe even have the upside to win the damn tournament, so they better be cheap. And if their upside is just kind of turns them into a cut maker, then I don't know how wise of a gamble that really is. I would take a Jim Furyk probably still in like a U.S. Open type of scenario where accuracy is at a massive premium, and that's why he's successful here too. But you still need some of that length. That still certainly helps, and you still need to be, kind of in peak athletic form at this stage of the golf game in the way the PGA has evolved this past say 5-10 years or so. DeChambeau hasn't played here and had a ton of history here. He's been okay earlier in the year. Of course, he went over to Asia and played and did very well over there. So his recent form's actually great, a little even stronger than this would show. Okay, solid form there. Charles Howell, this is a little rocky. Not a big fan for such a solid cut maker. Guy's a really good player, but this course doesn't seem to suit him. Looks like he's figured it out a little bit recently, but going back a little ways, that would maybe raise some question marks to me. Cabrera Bello, be all right, I guess. Hadwin would be somebody I'd really be interested in. Supposed to bring a decent amount of value. He's got good course history here, really good course history of the past 4 events, and then strong recent form. I'd be high on Hadwin. He'd be on my short list. Justin Thomas, always a stud type play, but look at this, a little bit rocky here. His recent form's great, a little bit rocky here. You'd be banking on an $11,900 guy to win. You're going to want to see something along the lines here of strong open odds, and then when they post the live odds and then post the drift, you're going to want to see big drift in his favor, because that's what's going to actually let you know what the public thinks. And if that, golf's one of those weird sports, and you can definitely fade the chalk. You can definitely play a good bit of of contrarian type of play, where if I know that somebody's going to be incredibly chalky, I can just drop him and hope he doesn't win, and then hopefully pick the winner somewhere else, and that's going to give me a lot of leverage on the field. Looking down the list a little bit further, here's outstanding course history out of Dustin Johnson. Wow. Good recent form, was also in Asia recently too. Kind of collapsed last week at Pebble Beach, which was a little bit disheartening, but maybe the weather played into it. Maybe he got in a fight with his wife, and that turned ugly on him because he had to play golf. His amateur partner was Wayne Gretzky, his father-in-law. So when you done your wife wrong and you got to go play 4 rounds of golf with her dad, I mean, of course I'm making light of the situation there, but who knows? Could be. No history out of Fleetwood, but Fleetwood's obviously a stud player. He would definitely be on the list, and just base assumption that he's going to make the cut because he's just one of the better players in the world on the planet right now. Decent recent form or decent course history out of Cockrack here. Cockrack is what I like to call him. I know it's pronounced different, but kind of slang. I just might as well just call him Jason Cock or something like that, because it's just even funnier. And yes, I still have a 6th grade sense of humor, but decent course history along with recent form. Here's what we're looking at. Cantlay is interesting only because he hasn't played here for quite a while, other than last year, and he played really, really well. Here's a missed cut out of Hideki. Didn't play here last year, coming off probably the injury from Waste Management where he withdrew, but played well up until then. Recent form solid. Hideki's the kind of guy you would think would be really, really good here. He's not the longest guy off the tee, but he's a fairly accurate ball striker. Problem is, dude can't putt. If he could hit greens, then these greens are old school like Pebble Beach. They're smaller square footage wise, so just by default, if you hit the green, you're closer to the pin than you might be on other courses, and then maybe gives him a better shot, because we all know the closer you are. I mean, I can hit the bullseye on a dartboard if I'm 6 inches away from it. So if Hideki's throwing darts, theoretically, then he's going to have decent chances, and that's what you're really hoping for out of him. And I think this year we've seen him have some good rounds. I don't know he's put 4 strong rounds together just yet. Martin Laird is an interesting pick. Solid recent form, decent price, decent value, decent course history. That's interesting. Martin Laird. So Laird would be one that I'd be looking for. Hadwin for sure would be one I'd be looking for. Don't know that I'll pay all the way up for Dustin Johnson, but I mean, how could you argue it? Scrolling down a little bit more, looking for just really more recent history. Never missed a cut here. Phil Mickelson. Recent form's really good. I know this 84 looks bad at Waste Management, but I'm telling you, the recent form's pretty strong. Phil, good solid play. Little surprised at Reavie here. I love playing Ches Reavie. His recent form is outstanding, but his course history is suspect. And here's another solid course history here in Spieth. Spieth's been picking up his game lately. Scrolling down a little bit more. Now we're getting down towards guys that are about mediocre on the value side of things. Look at Bubba. Bubba has won here 3 out of the last 5 years outside of the withdrawal. And recent form's okay. Bubba might be an interesting play today. Put him on the short list. Outside of the last, there's Furyk, 91st. But look at this, very solid course history outside of this. And then all of a sudden a random 91. And the only reason, like I said, it makes me wonder is his age. A couple of them in there for Ryan Moore. All right, so you get the basic idea when you access and open up this sheet, kind of what you're looking for. That's the first way I go through sorting lists and looking for people. If I wanted to go through looking for a little bit more in like the strokes gained type categories, let's see, where are we at first? This should be putting is last, strokes gained approach, maybe around the green, probably off the tee here. Last 10 rounds. Consistency, I guess you could look at for cash. We could bring the top of the driving, strokes gained driving type stats to the top for consistency, and you would see and there's an interesting one there, Cam Davis, Senden, Block. Very interesting that a lot of these guys are up here at the top of this stat, and none of these guys are high on the value list, other than maybe DeChambeau, which I would really point to him having a good week. Very, very interesting. Let's run over here to, let's see if this one is, dang, I keep hitting the wrong one. Not sure that that one is strokes gained approach. Let's see, Langley Hopkins. Without the headers, it definitely gets a little bit harder to do the research. So you'd have to be going back and forth between the two and taking a peek. But that's the main thing that I'm going to be sorting by is the strokes gained type columns. That's funny how that works. Going by the columns and then more looking at course history and recent form is really more what I'm after. So I scroll down this list a little bit more and sort it out by salary again. You can follow some of the value in terms of projections, and you can also go through the same course history and stuff list. You've already got an idea of who you would want to play. I mean, people are going to be popular, talking about Finau, but look what Finau's done here. Nothing. I would say he's a risk. Very, very strong risk. Another one was suspect course history in Mark Leishman. Very, very suspect. Can do well here, has done well here once in the past 6 years. So these are courses that typically are not setting up well for these guys. These guys are solid players. So I would roll through. I mean, we've got, showdown tools. We've got fantasy scoring. We've got, honestly, here's one for you. Fantasy scoring. Where's round one? Round one, short par 3, round one, strokes gained. Generally speaking, I would like to see overall round one scoring. That would probably just be in a showdown tool. Round 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to find, and that's big scoring, but I want to see their average. This might require going out to PGA.com or something like that. I want to see who typically scores well in round one. This would increase the chances of me having cut makers on my team too if I was just playing regular daily fantasy. Player comparison tool. Hopefully you saw that last week. You can plug in different names of guys. You can compare them side by side. So if you've got a tiebreaker between two guys at the end of your research, that would be one way to definitely hone that pick down. It helped me make a couple of great picks last week. And I will tell you this, or 2 weeks ago, one thing I would do is I would go digging down here at the bottom of the list. I would scroll this one down. And I would start looking for drift numbers, positive odds drifts. I would start looking for value being out of place, like the 5.87 down here with the 3s and 4s. Somebody like Carlos Ortiz has some decent course history here. Might be worth it as a GPP type of punt. Good course history here outside of last year in KJ Choi. Again, these are guys that I'd be looking at in terms of who has recent course history. I'd look for the recent form as well, but I'd be trying to figure out which of these guys would be maybe one of my punt plays. So, I'm looking for Bay. So I want to point him out. Sang Moon Bay. That's who I'm looking at. 7,100 on Fanduel, 7,000 on DraftKings. Come over here. You got no value whatsoever, but he's done well here in the past. I think that this is a sneakier punt type of play. I think DraftKings might have picked up on it. Whereas the other $7,000 guys are all in the $6,000 range. DraftKings, this one's priced up for a reason. Something's up there. So as a GPP type of punt, this is one thing I've seen done before for golf. If you go to an optimizer and you decide to make 20, 40, 50, 60, 70 lineups, one thing that you can do is take one of those punts, lock them in. The punts are always going to be a little bit lower on. There aren't very often chalk punts. There are chalkier punts than others, but not very often some do that is just like a free square where you have to take it. You lock him into your optimizer, run him in every one of your lineups. If he makes the cut, everything's going to probably do pretty well. It's a risk, and it's not for the faint of heart, but that is how I have seen legends 3 or 4 years ago dominate golf, dominate NASCAR, even dominate some football type stuff. Every time you would go up and see a dude in a multi-entry just rock the leaderboard, it was because his punt went off. Because it's very, very hard to build a tight knit core of 4 guys or so and then try and get them all across the finish line. But your punt, if you're, like let's say in hockey, let's say you lock in some third line guy and he scores a goal and he's in 10 of your lineups. Well, all 10 of your lineups are poised well. Lock in the goalie, lock in the starting pitcher, lock in a low owned punt baseball player and he hits a home run. Stuff like that can happen. And when that stuff happens, it leverages the field in GPP. So that's just one little strategy tip for you. If you made it all the way through the end of the video, I really appreciate it. I'm not my normal upbeat self right now because I'm kind of fighting through a headache, and I apologize for that. But in the meantime, this is one of those opportunities for you to jump in and explore the tools at DFSArmy.com. Daytona debuts this week. We're going to be cranking the NASCAR stuff. We're going to be cranking out the optimizer for the Daytona 500 as well. There's Truck Series open right now. I encourage you to check that information out under the NASCAR tab. I'll put the link to the PGA channel inside the comment section down there, and that'll take you right to the PGA tools and whatnot. If you're wanting to become a member, you just follow it right up to the pricing page and jump on in there. We'd love to have you. We'll talk coaching. We'll talk making you a better player in every single sport that we do. DFSArmy.com. Use that coupon code CHOP, CHOP. Don't forget to like and subscribe the notification bell down there at the bottom of the YouTube video. And I will hopefully see you guys before too terribly long. Have a good NBA All-Star break. We'll be talking an awful lot of hockey because a lot of guys gravitate over there for the week when they need to scratch the DFS itch. Take care and peace out.